Welcome to the For Love of Rugby. Welcome to the For Love of Rugby. We are live, and as you can tell,
first line. You had one job.
One job. I've been thinking about that for 80 minutes to watch that game. The Lions have just beaten the Reds 52-12, and we are joined by Rory Best. Thanks to our partner Sage. Bestie, great to have you with us, mate.
It's great to be here.
Thank you, mate.
Yeah, just got fed. I'm ready for a sleep. So.
I think any later, one you'd have either cracked open a beer by now, mate, and we'd be having a siesta. So,
it was sold to me. It was, when I heard live, I assumed it was in a pub in front of a live audience, but I'd far rather be here with you guys.
That is, well, that could have been in a pub, but instead we're here, mate. So, but yeah, well, first of all, what do you make of the game? We'll delve into it, obviously. But I suppose the first question is, as we gear towards the test match, who out of what we saw today has put their foot forward in terms of getting a selection for that first test? Who are you impressed with?
I think Jack Morgan was very good. Atoje was good. I think we probably saw enough from the halfbacks to say that they'll be in there. It's really difficult. And we talked about it, we were watching it, that 12 years ago, it's one of the issues you have when you're touring Australia is just that how much the second half, it kind of just folded away. The bench comes on, saw it last game as well. But look, I thought they're definitely starting to see a lot more from the Lions. The second row pairing, actually, both were very good.
Any questions, please fire in the comments as well for Rory, Coley or myself. Please put that in. The second row partnership, and obviously the line outs has been a little bit of an issue, and kickoffs were an issue against Western Force. Now, they didn't have to receive too many because Reds didn't knock in too many tries. However, in terms of that partnership, Coley, in terms of what you saw from the set piece, improvement, better?
Yeah, I think the line out looked better. Again, it's tough to judge the quality of what you're going against without knowing the Reds too well, but I think Marrow will be calling the line out, and obviously he's going to start the tests. Then it's a question of what happens alongside him. I think Ches was good today. I thought you could see his carry power. I think he probably made more of an impact. If you're looking at test teams, he might have made more of an impact last week coming off the bench and just bringing that directness. So, and McCarthy played really well last game. Sounds like last week, but it was 3 days ago. So 4 days ago. Yeah. So I think it was another step on for the Lions when they looked a bit more polished across the board. Looked like they're saying a bit more bedded into what they do. But I think again, not an issue, but the game's competitive to about 44 minutes, isn't it? Both games so far have been, first half's been, Lions have been on top. They never looked like losing today, but they actually were under a bit of heat occasionally, and they almost want that pressure. But defensively, they sort of I'd say the Lions spent more time in the tackle, less probably. There was a bit more Jacqueline today than last week, but even in the first half, they were sort of holding up runners and that kind of stuff, slowing the ball down that way. So defensively looked better, but 44 minutes, I think, whatever it was, or Lions scored, didn't they? And then that's the end of the game. I think it's tough the bench comes on and brings an impact, but again, the Lions bench, where they drop off from the Lions, the bench stays the same. I think the opposition bring their bench on and they drop considerably, so it's tough to get a read on that.
At the moment, the defence is being tested first 20, and therefore the back end of the game, you're not sure if the defence has gone up or not. So you watch it and you think, defence is looking better. They're winning more collisions, as you mentioned. The line speed's better. But actually, is it better, or is it just the fact that the drop-off is quite significant?
It's quite hard to know, because when you look at the start of the games, when teams are keeping the ball through phases, the Lions just look a little bit, and even when they're defending well, it's still it's a tackle on the gain line, or maybe just their side of the gain line. We saw a little bit more of it, but you'd love to see the bit more physicality. And the problem is that while they're learning a defensive system, to get that confidence to get off the line and hit somebody, you're sort of going, do I go? If I go, are you going to come with me or what? So that will take a little bit of time as well before we really see them flying off the line. But then if they're not being tested, then it's easy when there's not a lot of options in front of you, or they've finally got the ball back in 50 or 60 minutes and they're exhausted and they don't have any shape. It's easy to get off. But when they come up against Australia, there's going to be a lot more options. They have some good athletes. So if they get a few, and there's been a few missed tackles, but they've all been one-on-one tackles. And at this international level, the more one-on-one tackles you have, the greater the chance you have of missed tackles. It's just you should be looking to have those double hits all the time. So if they let these Australian athletes get one-on-ones with them, it's going to be difficult for them. So I'd like to see a little bit more from the defence, if I was being honest. I'd love to see more in the first half, then you'd really know. Because I think the two first halves of the games in Australia have been probably not as good defensively as you'd like. And then on your point, the second half, they look like they're dominating. But why are they dominating?
Yeah, exactly. And I think you almost, what you want to see when they play New South Wales Waratahs at the weekend on Saturday is, can they bring that intensity from the start? Because it's hard to gauge, isn't it? They're not quite winning collisions, or it's certainly on the gain line, bestie, or just behind. Then that's creating speed of ball. So if you're Joe Schmidt, you're looking at that thinking, right, tight shapes, like carry through, speed of ball at the breakdown, and away we go, and you almost play on top. And I thought Jack Morgan, as you mentioned, had a great game in terms of jackling and things like that. But you picked up on something, Cole. You felt that actually potentially there was a lot more effort around second half. 2 men in the tackle, slow it down. Well, not necessarily
even
jackal first.
In the first half, I think probably last week, 4 days ago, there was no jackal penalties at all. You know what I mean? And guys were almost flopping over the breakdown. There was a pile up, and then Lions were sort of going over the breakdown, slow the ball that way. Whereas I think, you look today, the second man, there was sort of one low, and the second man was almost trying to wrap the ball up, wrestle it a bit, and then slow the ball down that way. And there wasn't anyone going over the top of a breakdown as sort of second, third man. And I think later in the game, when it opened up, there was more opportunities for Morgan and stuff to get the jackals. There was a couple in the first half as well, but you know what I mean? I think they just probably Lions spent a bit more time in the tackle as second man.
Probably a refereeing bit to that as well. The Southern Hemisphere referees just hate a jackal penalty unless it's clear and obvious. Said last week, a few days ago, they give away a lot of penalties and stuff that probably in the Northern Hemisphere or Northern Hemisphere ref, of which there's 2 in the tests, you're going to get penalties for. So it is kind of, the jackal's going to be an interesting one.
It was quite okay as well, because a lot of the time in the Northern Hemisphere, I think, having watched that first game, the speed at which the sort of collision and the clear out happens is, the Northern Hemisphere, I'd say it's a little bit slower, but there's time for a guy to roll away and then the jackal goes in. Whereas like in that game, it looked literally like as soon as the tackle was made, the breakdown was happening. So therefore, the appearance of the guy rolling away and the guy jackling is so delicate. I think almost referees didn't want to touch it in some regards. So yeah, I think you'll find out more in the next couple of games how those are going to be refereed. And we don't know what the intel is between the referees and the Lions and the series. But yeah, I think defensively. But the thing is, well, on another note, I don't know how much time, as we said off air, it was like the Lions have got almost like 3 attack coaches. They obviously want to build this attacking shape and stuff. So how much time are you actually committing to defence? And it's one thing going like, I'll get off the line and belt them. But if you're not spending time doing that, I'm not saying they should, but you know what I mean? You've got to kind of pick your poison in regards to how you set your team up. And if you're invested in attack and the Lions obviously want to go and attack and score points, then you defensively you have to make a compromise somewhere. And sometimes that, and I think even today, like you saw it, they went for about 18 or 20 phases. I think they got undone with a high tackle, but like you could see them just defending. They're quite happy defending. Then as soon as the ball, there's a couple of times turnover, they go to an edge and they go, and Lions can go the distance. Whether we're setting themselves up to be force an error at some point, they'll get you and then go.
There's definitely a common theme that you can see from defensively. Once they do get that turnover, that transition is absolutely like ball shifted away, try and get to wider channels as quickly as possible. Like it's most teams' mantra to do that is obviously move it as soon as you get a turnover, but they can see the effort of what they're trying to do there. I think on the terms of defensive stuff as well, Coley, when you're going Saturday, Wednesday, and of course all the travel as well, Bestie, like there is only so much you can do collision work.
Yeah.
But I've got a question for you, Bestie. Obviously captained Ulster, Ireland and captain Lions as well on a number of times. With the interpretation around the breakdown and things like that, for someone that enjoyed jackling as well, and the responsibility of dealing with the referee, is that something that you would talk about pre, or is that something that you'd have your philosophies, you go into the game, and then how quickly you can read the referee and then adapt it to the team?
Definitely go into the test matches. There will be a lot of work done on the referee. I'm sure there will be. These games are coming so thick and fast, it's hard to assess. You've got to kind of read that as you go. But going into the test matches, you're going to know how these referees like to ref the breakdown. And then when you get on the pitch, it's got to be a feel for it. You don't want to stop. Like if you look at the last game, you don't want to stop somebody like Tagburn going for turnovers because he's going to make a lot. But the first 10 or 15 minutes, he got blown off the park. And actually, he should have known, or it should have been said to him, just leave it. Leave it for, because the refs, the thing about, you got to understand how to read a ref as well. Like, they have their little tick box to go, right, well, I've done this. And a lot of the game can be, the first 15 minutes, the first 20 minutes can be refereed according to what they're looking for. And then you let them, because they're human as well, you let them settle down into the big occasion, and then they start to let the game flow, and that's when you get your opportunities, and that's when you've got to be very smart, and that's knowing how to play the ref. So given the back row selection that they have in the squad, they're going to have to go after Jackals, because they've picked a lot of, we talked about it during the game, there's a lot of sevens in there that love to go after the ball on the ground. You've Tag Byrne in there that Toje loves to go for the ball on the ground as well. So the first thing they've got to do is get that defensive system right, so that they can make some offensive tackles, and then the breakdown or the jackal is so much easier. So they got to learn to read the ref a little bit better, but they've got to get that defensive system it's not much, sort of 5% better to get offensive collisions, and a lot of it I think is trust and just understanding where everyone is.
Just for those that may not know what jackling is, that is when a defensive player, when someone's been tackled, defensive player can then obviously try and steal the ball. We had someone comment last week.
Yeah, it's ironic that you're explaining it.
I know. Yeah. I think I got 2 in 500 attempts. I was very good at attempting, then moving out of the way and screaming at the ref for the guy going off his feet. For those that have just joined, we are live for the Love of Rugby. We're joined by Rory Best, thanks to our partners, Sage. Just follow on in terms of talking about, we obviously touched on the locks a little bit there with chairs. We talked about the back rowers. I think we'll come back to them as Bestie shortly. But I just want to touch on Gibson Park, and also want to touch on Finn Russell, of course. So those two for me definitely look like the combination. It was great to see them get some minutes today together. I thought, given the fact they've never played together, I thought the synergy looked really, really nice. And again, the longer it went on, the better it looked. The only time I could think that there was maybe a slight breakdown was goal line dropout, and we've seen this shape a lot from the Lions. I think Ireland run it consistently. I think you only have to go back to when England played Ireland in the Six Nations, and you look at that shape that they went through and they scored. I think James Lowe eventually scored in the corner or something. That 4-man pod where they hit the third guy. So goal line dropout, they receive it, goes all the way across to Bundyaki, who's got Tom Curry on a short ball. He actually plays Tom Curry. Unfortunately, it breaks down. But Finn Russell swings right, and actually if he goes left, that will go out the back to him. You can see Elliot Daly also making the extra number on the outside there, but Russell went right. So that, apart from that, you could see the synergy there. I thought Gibson Park and Bestie, I'd love to know your thoughts on him, of having played with him, and of course you know him. But my thoughts on Gibson Park, I thought great tempo, great speed of ball. I think his pass selection is one of the best. Because people will just look at it and think, in 22 attack, Bestie, you're going the same way, right? And you just, but you still got to select the right pass, because you've got 3 runners at the line. You can hit the first guy, you can hit the second guy, the third guy. But I think his ability to get out those first few steps, square up. As a defender, you have to sit, and you see, I think Jack Morgan's try came from it. I think that was actually a ball from Alex Mitchell, I think, hit Jack Morgan. But that's that sort of shape of that pass selection where you blindside the defender. So as they're looking at Gibson Park, these runners come from the outside and catch you off guard. So I thought his pass selection was outstanding. I thought his speed of ball was outstanding. And I just thought him and Russell, you could just see they kicked it off in terms of that combination.
Yeah, I think he definitely got better as the game went on. You need to remember he hasn't played in...
No.
I can't remember when. Is it a month? I don't know what it'll be, still in July. And you're right, I think his biggest strength is his rugby IQ. He's exceptional. It's that pass selection. It's knowing when to kick, knowing when to run, knowing when to kick it out, knowing when to kick it long. He always gets a second touch. If he does break and plays a shorter pass, he'll always be thereabouts. So the break, he offloaded on the inside to Marrow for the try. He just so he came to Ireland a number of years ago, did that qualification, and really in the last 3, 4, 5 years, since he broke into the international scene, he has just kept getting better and better and better. And it was great to see him growing into the game the way he did. But look, he has been exceptional. He's actually been a large part of why Leinster have dominated in the URC and getting to all the European finals, and why Ireland have been so successful. Just he has this ability just to play what's in front of him. And you'll see, you talked about that pass selection, but actually when you're defending it And when you're watching it from a defensive point of view, he can hit anything, but especially going right to left with Ireland and Leinster, he has this ability to fire this thing over the top to James Lowe, especially. The two of them have a really, really good connection that most people, it ends up in an intercept, whereas his always goes to hand and always gives somebody time to read, step, do something. And when you're 2 or 3 meters from the line, if you can give somebody a one-on-one with a bit of footwork, it is very, very difficult to stop.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought he was really class. As you say, Best, he almost grew into it, but very, very slick. Him and Russell look very good together.
I think he works
well
with Russell in regards to, like, Russell kind of sometimes doesn't say floats in our games, but he sits back and lets things happen and then picks his moment to strike. Whereas, like, if you've got Gibson Park who can run the forwards off him and just runs the sort of tempo of the game there, then Russell can step up, can't he? Instead of, like, sometimes the nine's always looking for the 10 to do what he wants, but Gibson Park can run the game, run the forwards, find a short side, make breaks, that kind of stuff. And then when Russell's ready, he goes, give me the ball, and that's when he strikes. You know, I think Russell's at his best sometimes. He always from Scotland, where he's like just round the corner. He's looking for, like, where the tight end is and finds him and runs at him and pulls a move on him. And that's where I think those two work really well, in the fact that you can almost let Gibson Park run the show there inside you. You can organise something here, and then when you want it, you know it's going to come to you.
Yeah, and that speed of pass as well. Like, you give Finn Russell an extra split second to throw the pass or pick which pass he's doing. We've seen it with Scotland, where he's able to throw these big passes to somebody coming short, then somebody out the back or somebody longer. He throws a 20, 30 metre pass and bang, Hugh Jones is gone. Seems to do it a lot against England. But it's when you give Finn Russell, take a little bit of responsibility off, like Coley's saying, but also give him a little bit more time on the ball. He's one of the most talented players I've ever played against and played with, very briefly, but he is... When you give him that little bit of freedom, that split second, you guys know, Coley maybe you less so, but whenever you get a split second of time, it makes a big difference. Or these faster people seem to think it makes a big difference.
No, he is exceptional. And as Coley mentioned, you mentioned there, Bestie, he's happy to Gibson Park, like, do it, and he sits back and he's just assessing the situation, right? Who's slow to set? What's the backfield doing? And then he can just come into that straight away. The other thing I want to mention, just whilst we're on the halfbacks quickly, is just the Lions and their strike plays from lineouts. And I'll ask you, gents, about the set piece as a whole shortly. But in terms of their strikes, they got to width really well today. I think that was really noticeable. You're seeing some variations from the Lions, and I think that will keep Australia guessing, because sometimes you're seeing them go short, but today seemed like a real... mindset to go to the width early. So they were doing lots of lineouts, might be a 5+1, things like that, where the insert comes in, they break away, Gibson Park long pass to 12, trying to get that width, that shape we speak about a lot. 9 to 12, 13 short, 10 out the back. We saw the Lions exploit it. Tommy Freeman, of course, scored that try when it did the same shape. 12, 13 out the back, hit Daly get Freeman foot race, which was his first try, Tommy Freeman's first try. And I just thought their ability to go to width was really impressive, and you actually saw their run meters were very high today. And a lot of that was once they went to width, they came back again and went to width. So, we're seeing some variety in terms of their strikes, but Ireland are renowned, Bestie, whenever we played Ireland, like those strikes and those menus, so I could say a 2 to 3 phase structured map for the listeners off lineouts. But you could see today some of that and the variations, but certainly a big emphasis on getting to the width.
Yeah, I think the big thing is that the first half, and probably the first half of both games in Australia and on the Argentina game as well, is they're going to width very early, very quickly, and they don't really... I think that the big thing that Ireland always had was that they would play a lot to width, but they always had the option to go short. So a couple of times early on, the short ball was actually the guy that was dropping it. It's almost like they're thinking, we're going to width, and then it's on to play. And they just haven't quite got that yet. It's been played a width in the first half, and then they've went, right, we need to lay the line a little bit better. We need to get our back row carrying more. And in the first 2 games in Australia, they've been a bit more direct in the second half, and then they've, like, ultimately their sheer size and physicality has been able to dominate the opposition. So that is the little... I'm sure from the attack point of view, they'll be looking to go, how do we make sure the width only works if you have options across to play front door? There was a few times that Bundy, Aki was kind of drifting across the pitch. He threw one to Will Stewart at one stage. He was kind of drifting across. And as a front row, it is incredibly difficult. You have somebody fast. It was 35 minutes, so you're rather tired. And you're trying to pick a line because you can't just accelerate onto it. You need to be running. You need to be going, right, from 5 metres away, I need to start the momentum here or else it's not going to happen. And Bundy's drifting across the pitch and he kind of threw it to him, whereas you'd just love to see Bundy square up, which allows either Will Stewart to run the next hole and he can play him, or just carry or out the back. So just little bits and pieces they need to iron out in that, because they had a lot of run meters, but there's times sort of go, is it just individual brilliance on the edge, or is it actually they working this really well? And I think it's probably a little bit of the former, just while they're ironing out those little creases.
Yeah, we've spoken about it, haven't we, Coley, Bestie, before, when we spoke about some of the other games the Lions have played, is almost it's easier to bring it in to be more direct than it is to go direct from the start and go, right, now we're going to play with some width. So I don't think they'll be overall worried, but there's definitely there is some teething problems within that, and we saw some errors. There was also one towards the back end of the first half, wasn't there? Great position. I think Hugh Jones froze it, and you'd love to see him just, again, like you say, like square up, take someone on, and we go there.
But just on that, say, part of that might be, it's easy to play to width and then, say, pull it back in when you need to. But do you reckon also that might be part of the mind game of Farrell and Australia in the test, and going like, showing Australia playing to width, then the first test, Lions got the guts, if so. You know what I mean? Like, is it part of that sort of trying to, because if you show, I'm not saying show everything, but you sort of show this expansive game, and then Australia might analyse that, and then you bring something different, and it's probably easier to go that way around than just go in, if we carry up the guts, say all these midweek games, just carry up the guts, then go get to test match, be like, right lads, we're playing to the width, and everyone's like, well, we haven't done it for 6 weeks, you know what I mean? Like, it's a lot harder, I guess, to go that way than the other way around.
It's funny, sort of knowing the two coaches, that there's kind of a differing opinion on it, that Faz will know what Joe was like, and Joe will analyse. And I think David Nucifore has already said in a little jibe earlier that about the amount of analysing that Australia will do. So Faz will know that Joe will be looking at that going, right, this is what they're going to do. They're going to play the width. This is their shape. They're going to do this. And then he'll be going, oh, Bundy's going to cross. We can get at them. And actually, on your point, Ben, easier to bring it from wide into a bit tighter if you need to. It's almost like they're showing this shape, knowing that Joe will go, oh, we can unpick them by doing this, and this. But then on the flip side of it is, like, I've known Faz a long time. It's not something that he does. He's very much going, we'll deliver our game and they'll not be able to compete with it. That's been in everything we've done. When he came in as a defence coach in 2016 for Ireland, it was like, this is the shape to show, this is what they do, but we don't want to concentrate too much on that, because if we get our stuff right, they can't beat us. So whether, I think it'd be foolish of Faz to try to get into a mind game with Joe, especially when he's got the stronger squad. You just go and you deliver the best of that you can, and I don't think the Aussies could cope with it. But if they start to mess around too much, and like we were watching the 2005 tour the other night, my son Ben and I, and that was the one where in the first test they decided they'd completely change all the lineouts the night before the game, and like they didn't barely want a lineout, and like that you just can't on a tour like this. When you're trying to break down barriers, you're trying to get to know people that you've spent 4 years knocking lumps out of, you're trying to learn what the coaches want, the systems you want. If you start to sow different seeds of doubt in something, go, but don't worry, when we get to the test, we'll change all this. It's like, oh, what do you want? And I'd be very surprised if Faz is, I think he's probably just allowing them to express themselves a bit, knowing that they can just, they have players. You look at Pilato, Aki, Jack Conan, they have players that Dan Sheehan that can carry really, really hard and really direct.
Absolutely, Bestie. Actually leads on quite nicely, actually. We've got a question, so keep the questions coming in. Of course, we're live. We'll try and get through as many as we can, but there's still plenty to talk about. We have a question from Shabby. Is the amount of scrum penalties concerning to you both?
Right now, no. I don't think so.
Why?
I think partly you're working on combinations of your front row. Partly, I think it's, I won't say refereeing, but like the minute the scrum doesn't seem to be, I think both teams, Australia and Lions, I wouldn't say a setup to be like South Africa where they're going to kill you with a scrum. I think the scrum is yes, you want to get an advantage, but actually your focus is outside of the scrum on playing the ball away. And I think it's been refereed that way, which might again lead into how you pick your teams and play. And secondly, there's going to be scrum penalties. It's just where you obviously don't want to be losing ones your own ball and giving the opposition kickable ball. But again, I don't think there's anything too concerning. Like today, a lot of them were on the sort of the Lions had a couple of ropey ones early doors where you thought, a bit under pressure, and so they got the calls. But again, they'll probably be ironed out from refereeing staff come test matches. But when the Lions actually got it right second half, they were even ending the first half, the starters were starting to turn the screw.
Talked about combinations in terms of Gibson Park and Russell and how impressive that was. Do you like the combinations you're seeing in terms of those two front rows that we saw, obviously coming on, the ones that start and the ones coming on?
Yeah, I think the front row is probably, it's almost in every tour, it's the first one you kind of see becoming a combination, because there's nearly always 9 front rows. You kind of rotate them round in threes. And I would say probably that 3 that started at the minute, and there's still a few games left, but like that to me looks like maybe the front row that'll come off the bench, and then the front row that started in the last game with probably Genge coming in instead of Schoeman, in my opinion. And then very quickly that turns into, if it is that way, where that sort of Porter, Kelleher and Stewart then nearly get involved in absolutely every match day 23, but they're nearly always on the bench. I think it was in New Zealand, sort of that Jack McGrath, Ken Owens and Sink, they were involved in, I think Jack was involved in every match day 23 the way it worked out, because it is really important at the scrum. I agree with Coley, like I wouldn't be too concerned at the minute, because they're trying to get those combinations sorted, trying to give them a bit of game time, and a lot of the scrums are hitting and kind of fiddling around a little bit and then going straight down, and then it is just a bit of a lottery. But yeah, I like the look of those front rows. I think when you look at if it is, and let's assume that they're going to be the threes.
Yeah, assuming that it's going to be Genge, Sheehan, Furlong.
Yeah, and I think you look at the dynamism.
Stewart to come on with Kelleher and Porter. Yeah.
And I think when you look at the starters and you look at the dynamism they have and the aggression they have and just the kind of the stubbornness, the competitiveness that those 3 have, and then you look at the impact that can come on.
It's powerful, that.
Yeah, I think Kelleher always does better coming off the bench. You know, he's a big, strong ball carrier, and Porter's a bit the same. I think when you start Porter, he can get a wee bit excited at scrum time and swing out and give away the odd penalty. Like you guys know Will Stewart better than I do, but for me, those 2 coming off the bench would be powerful with those 3 starting.
Well, I think you look at it, Porter can start or bench, same with Genge, but I think the best 80 minutes is probably like a Genge starting, who's giving you 50 minutes of ball carry. You can say have your first phase move, second phase moves going through Genge, get him carrying, and then Porter's so explosive that he can come on. He probably offers you more off the bench for 30 minutes, like charging kicks down and just bringing energy than Genge would in some regards. Whereas similar with Furlong and Stewart, if Stewart started the test match, you would not be surprised at all. But you think of like Stewie's power, his ability to carry a ball and do that off bench. You bring that with Porter, with Keller and stuff like that. You like Australia get to 60 minutes of a test, and you bring on that, and potentially again, depending on who you pick there, might depend on who else forward sits wise on the bench. But you bring on that and a tight 5, and you're like, you know what I mean? Then you're up against it, and they can play. They can either go tight in regards, if you need to make it a set-piece game, Porter and Stewart can do that, or if you need someone to run and hit things, they can do that as well. So, you know what I mean? Like, you basically, it's not like you're picking a bench to see out the game or chase the game. You've got a bench to actually do what needs to be done to win it.
How do you, obviously, Sheehan well, Kelleher well, like the difference between those 2, Bestie? Like, we all know about Sheehan's pace, but in terms of sometimes you see all the highlights of the pace and all the things into wide channels, but what about actually the close quarter stuff?
I'd say Kelleher is definitely a better scrummager. Now, Sheehan is learning, and the problem is, like Dan Sheehan, when you meet him, sort of look him on the pitch, you go, he's big and he's athletic, but actually when you meet him, he's bigger than you think. He's a big frame. So the scrummaging wise, if you're that tall, you just have got to learn how to move your body a little bit better, and the things that you maybe got away with at a lower level to dominate a scrum, you don't anymore at test level. If he, for example, without getting too technical, if he dips his hips to try to lift and use his strength to beat someone in the scrum, he's going to get destroyed, because that is what you're looking for as an opposition hooker. I think that probably Dan Sheehan is this unbelievable, outside of that athleticism, he has this unbelievable ability to be unaffected by a mistake. You know, like the boys would say it when they're training, you know, you miss a line out, he doesn't care. He just goes to the next one, which is what you talk about as a hooker. You go next play, but it's the furthest thing. As soon as you miss a line out, you're going, oh, please not let there be a line out for another few minutes just till I get my composure back. Whereas he just seems to get it back straight away, which is maybe why Faz sees him as a leader. But like, he is probably the best, if not one of the best hookers in the world at the minute, his overall game. And I think they complement each other very well, because if the scrum is under pressure, you can bring Kelleher on to tighten that up. You see, because everyone talks about Dan's speed, but actually Ronan Kelleher is fast as well. He used to play in the backs at schoolboy, which is no mean feat for a front row. Coley, is it? And
I don't know where the backs is, mate. I don't know where that.
But he is, I just think that Dan just has this sort of air about him that he is one of the best players in the world. And he's not cocky in that he knows it, but he knows his ability, he knows what he's good at, and he just has this, he's always in the right place in the right time, and if you give him an inch, he's gone. Imagine being that fast, it'd be unbelievable.
I'm just having a flashback. Was it in New Zealand? Did you have a back spasm in one of the games? And they literally got to a line out, and it's like you had to throw like the ball, like the ball, long ball over the back of the line out to the 12. Yeah. It was just like you had to arc back, and it was like
it was agony. That may also been because the ball went horrifically
was it like a paper bag and a hurricane? Or was it like the 12 mumbling?
Just laid on the floor like backspace. Like, I think it was like tight backs like that. And it was literally like got to the line out. It was like, right, throw it over the top. It's like absolutely not.
Who was the line out call in that game? Was it Hendo?
It would have been Hendo. Yeah.
Cheers, Hendo. Yeah, no. Back spasm. You're calling the one to go all the way over the top. It's like,
it might have been a retrospective back spasm.
Was it once it left? You know?
Knew the ball was coming, so it's like, oh no, I don't think I can throw it.
It was kind of the back. I remember that I did sort of my rib absolutely wrecked, sort of back into my ribs, and sort of was playing on, and even like I threw onto the front the Tipperick, and he caught it about here. Now he says he caught it about here, and then he slagged me about it after the game. I go, mate, please, like, you have any idea who sore that was? All you have to do is run around with your blue scrum cap and make jackals and chip the ball.
Oh, that's good. We are live for Love of Rugby. We are joined by Rory Best. Thanks to our partner Sage. Any questions, keep firing them in as we talk about the Lions, all things Lions, having just dismantled the Reds. Bestie, get a bit more view. Obviously, you know the Irish boys so well compared to ourselves.
We get some flack on here because we are give such an English bias.
Apparently,
which, understandably, that's what we know.
Leinster fans get a little bit annoyed with us because we kind of, obviously when Saints won, we kind of said that Leinster maybe when they get to a tougher game, they're so used to dismantling everyone and running away with it, then they finally get to a tough game. It doesn't work out. Anyway, we love the Irish.
We've got Irish guests. You've gone from your Leicester bias to an English bias. Now we're going to just go for a Lions bias.
A little bit,
Well, or edging down.
And then a 4-year drought. But we'd love to know a little bit more about characters like Conan, for instance, who I thought had a great game at 8. So let's maybe talk about him, and then that will lead us nicely into the back row balance. But so Conan's obviously the only out-and-out 8 that's going. Of course, Benel can play there, but really is a 7. So a bit about Conan.
Yeah, he just, as a rugby player, he is a proper physical specimen. You know, just the sheer size of him. He is very, very disciplined with his diet.
I know the feeling.
It's just brilliant.
It's not everyone can do it.
It is.
It's not easy.
It takes a lot of you have to look after yourself very, very well. Me and him. Both vegans in the squad. The biggest frustration with Jack Conan is just the number of games that he plays. He is very unlucky with little niggly injuries, and his foot was a problem for a while, and which is maybe why he's so big. If you spend quite a bit of time on the sideline, you build yourself up, but there is no doubt in his ability. He's somebody that, again, a bit like we're talking about Dan Sheehan, you don't realise how big he is. You sort of see and you go, flip, he's big, but then you see him in real life, and when you go to tackle him, his ability to win the last metre in a collision, you think you've got him lined up and you come away with a very, very sore shoulder, and he'll always get over the gain line. Another very, very smart rugby player. You saw those quick hands today. Like when you train with him and you play against him and you play with him, you see those moments all the time. He's a proper rugby player, and I hope that because if he stays fit, for me, they want to physically dominate Australia, and to do that, you need a number 8 that, a bit like the way Toby was in the tours that we were on, just in tight space, a small step, and bang, win a metre. And a metre in those little moments can be like 3, 4, 5 metres somewhere else.
Well, like that metre creates speed of ball that gets Gibson Park on the front foot, that allows him to do his thing. I was really impressed with him today. Like you say, those hands with Ollie Chesham, then to Conan, puts Drew van der Merwe away. Like, don't underestimate that skill. Just to be able to do that catch and pass, just draw the defender.
That bit of the footwork and the carry is probably where the similarities of Toby and Jack finish. I don't think the diets would necessarily align that heavily.
What about the characters then, Bestie? In terms of him as a character, then I start looking at the other lads. So Gibson Park, Mac Hansen, of course, by all accounts, is an absolute legend and a champion of a bloke. You've got James Lowe, you've got Bundy Aki, you've got Joe McCarthy, who I thought had a great game against the Western Force. We'll touch on him again. And all these boys, Ty Furlong, like characters who will be bringing the sort of that cohesion off the field together.
They're all really good guys. I think Bundy is just somebody, he is like dealing with a child, and that's where it's probably quite a good thing that they're playing so many games, and maybe take a little bit of the energy off him, because there's times when you get to the end of a Six Nations, and at the start it's great crack, and by the end of it, especially if you've lost a game or two, you're a bit like, Bundy, please, not today. Like,
was there a clip online of him playing golf, and he tees off and he hits the ball and it goes like over there? It turns out he's picked up like the left-handed club, so he's hit it with the other side of the.
No, he hasn't.
Nothing would surprise me. Before the World Cup in 19, we were playing golf in Galway, I think it was, and the first tee, like, we're maybe 200 yards down the fairway. Next thing, this ball comes flying over the top. And you looked round, and he goes, oh, geez, I never hit it like that normally. You're going, all right, well, brilliant. So the 1 in 10, you decided to take chances with our lives. Brilliant, thanks, Bundy. But he's a great guy. He's actually a very, very good teammate, Bundy. Because if you need a bit of a pick-me-up, he's there. He does genuinely care about the team, and there's times he gets a bit of bad press because he just is. He can be a liability, but he's brilliant. I've always found him really, really good. He's actually very good anytime he meets the kids, he'll recognise them straight away, chat to them. So no, he's a great guy. Obviously Furlong, maybe don't know him as well. Coley knows him, like a compulsive liar. It's hard to know. He just loves to tell tales and stories, and you never know which one's true. You never know, and you always have to second guess him. Like, he had Leo Cullen believe him for years. That's the famous story that there were truffle farmers from Wexford, and him, and then his dad, who unfortunately passed away a little while ago. There were three peas in the pod. Even when you met his dad after the game, you'd always be going like, well, is that true or not? And just there's always he got from his dad, he just this glint in his eye that he just loves to crack, loves to eat, loves to sit around the table like you would and because he's from a farming background in the countryside and in Wexford in Ireland, and just sit around the table with family and just slag, and the dinner could last 2-3 hours. But no, they're really, really, they are genuinely a good bunch. With normally, traditionally, I would always thought Leinster ones were a bit strange back when I started playing. Whereas that's the annoying thing now. They've become this really, really good side that are actually full of really decent people too.
What about Simon Easterby, of course, coached Ireland for a very long time. He's doing the defence. We touched on the defence early on. And just sort of his approach will be, and his expertise, and how he'll complement Andy Farrell.
He probably works more than any other coach that I've worked with. He'd be right up there alongside Steve Borthwick in terms of the hours he spends in front of the computer, the analysis he'll do, and no matter what extras you want to do, he'll always do it. Like going into the 19 World Cup, he would always do the line-out stuff for me. So we were doing crazy stuff like in swimming pools because we knew it was going to be hot and humid, like throwing line-outs in the swimming pool. He'd be standing on the edge, I'd be in firing it, and he'd be firing the ball back into the water. I go, I forgot. Like, I know we're trying to, like, I'm wet anyway, like, doesn't need to go in. But he will do a lot of work. But the other great thing with Simon is that his off the field, he is a great guy. He's a very, very good guy to go and have a beer with. He's always interested in what you're doing, what you're up to. And on a tour like this, it is about the expertise and the coaching you're going to get, but actually it's about those coaches understanding that within that squad, everyone is going to be at a slightly different place. Like we talked about it off air, but Coley, you know, when we went to play the Chiefs in Waikato, and look, it was quite clear that the test 23 or certainly 15 had been ring fenced, and we were kind of sent on to go, well, do whatever you can, but this is probably the best Super Rugby team, so you basically have no chance. And the night before the game, all the coaches had went out except for Steve. Steve was sitting at the computer room, and I remember saying to him, going, are you not way out with everyone else? He goes, well, I just thought I'd wait around just in case he's needing anything for tomorrow. And that's we then sat with him and talked a bit about the game, and he said, well, look, just to get these boys together to make sure they understand how important this game is to set up for the test, why don't we in the morning go for a bit of a walkabout, go for a coffee together, and then come back, because it's a long day, to 8 o'clock in the evening, especially in New Zealand. You know, so you need coaches that understand. And Simon's been on a tour. He's been a tourist. He was a brilliant player. When I made my debut for Ireland, he was a captain. And he's come a long way. You know, he sort of coached Scarlets very quickly into head coach of Scarlets, and what wasn't a particularly good Scarlets team at the time, despite playing in one that was brilliant. And he sort of came through that rough patch and came into Ireland and has been exceptional.
Yeah, no, he looks an impressive character, which then, whilst your expertise, Bestie, because of course you were coached by Joe Schmidt and Andy Farrell. You know, we had Faz in his early days, but you know, what a coach he was for us. So God knows how good he is right now. You know, well, you can see it, but you know, to think what the coach caliber he is now would be very impressive, I'm sure. Just him and Joe Schmidt, and I suppose you said about a bit of cat and mouse, a little bit of that, but just in terms of, I suppose, the way they see the game, the way they approach it.
Well, how much Farrell learned off as well, coming in defence coach, and was obviously Joe had the vision to bring him in and was happy with that, and just how they will have learnt off each other going into the series, you know, going to the test matches, what you sort of...
Yeah, I think they're quite different in their approaches. You know, Faz sort of sees the game as being an expression of yourself. You know, 15 people together as a team going out there with no fear to express themselves. Whereas Joe will see the game as being discipline, structure. You got to know your role, I know my role, and together that then amounts to a team performance. And I think probably the biggest mistake I always see with coaches is that when one goes who's been successful, the next one comes in, they have a tendency to go, oh, I didn't like that, so I'm going to completely change everything.
Yeah.
And probably at the very, very start, I think Faz probably did that a little bit, because we went from being the best breakdown side, and it was quite boring because we used to go 20, 30 phases, maybe not go that far, but eventually get a penalty kick to the corner and maul, to then being one of the worst breakdown sides. But it was almost like they wanted to go so far away from, you know what ruck you're in, to going, right, whatever you see, go and play. But then it just took a little bit of a step back after that, and Paulie coming in probably went, look, why have we went away from the stuff that Joe was doing at the breakdown? And it just needed that refocus again and get that blend between the great stuff that Joe did, but then the bit that Faz does, which is the freedom, the playing with no fear. You always hear him saying he just wants people to be the best version of themselves. And he genuinely, when you meet him and when you spend time with him now, not that he was my head coach, but chatting to him, you get, you just know from coaches and people whether they actually care about you or whether they're just saying it because, you know, it's an interview, or whether they're sort of saying it because they think it's what you want to hear. And I think that's the big thing with Faz. He genuinely actually cares what's going on in your life, what's going on the pitch, what's going on off the pitch. Like the Hendy we talked about earlier, like Hendy, I think it was the England game, and his wife was due to give birth, and Faz just went, look, I'm not picking you. You need to be family. There are a few things that are more important than rugby, and this is one of them. Go and be with your family at this time. You know, just stuff like that, because you know what it's like as a player. You're probably under pressure. Not that you necessarily maybe want to be there, but you're under pressure to be there.
You are,
but you want to play.
And it was almost when they take that decision for you, it makes it a lot easier, doesn't
it? Totally. Yeah, totally.
We're, of course, live for the love of rugby, joined by Rory Best. Thanks to our partner, Sage. Keep the questions coming in, and we'll try and get through it as much as we can. Coley, Thatcher's gold moment, please.
My moment would be probably Van der Merwe's try in the corner, where it goes through Chesham, carried hands, quick hands into the corner and scores.
It's just a classic, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I'd like to see
classic hands, mate.
You know, like the old days where they just like inside hit
I want to see
really
the
fall
hips
away
work
from the
there.
hip. I'd like to see a bit more of a fall away from the pass. Certainly, all those old boys back in the day would have you could have really gone back inside it. Very nice, very nice. We've got a question from Rob. Rory, the boys have lightly touched on your legendary drinking skills from when we were on tour together. What's your memories of them? I mean, if you can.
My eldest has been keeping me up to date. I seem to appear quite a bit on your podcast. The only reason I'm here is to sort of
set the record straight.
Yeah, but actually, they're all untrue. You've just dropped me into these situations because I don't remember any of these.
What about the one in 2017 where you essentially they took you were asleep in a bed and they put the bed outside, but you were meant to catch a flight and no one was sure whether you would actually wake up for it.
You see, whenever you let James Haskell loose on any story, you need to go. We've now gone 100 miles in the wrong direction. There was probably quite a few elements of it are very true. The hospital bed was in the hotel, and my version of it is that we'd sort of been drinking all day. Remember, we had the boxes of beer, and then by the end of it all, sort of once you'd finished your box of beer, we then carved a face into the box to represent your personality. So of course Coley's was the biggest frown you could ever put. You needed another box underneath.
The box goes over the head. The box goes over the head. You have your eyes, and then you do your either a smile or thing. So he had a big frown.
Yeah. So then
makes sense.
Everyone's had these smiley ones. I was just like, oh, fuck, like that.
And then I said, my memory of it is that I would get onto the bed and be funny to pull the sheet over the top. And then we'd wheel it out onto the street, and I'd jump up and go bah like that. Like, bear in mind, it's sort of the middle of the day now. So there's people in Auckland.
Just on a Tuesday afternoon.
People going to work. It was like, and but I sort of, because I was under the sheet, obviously I don't remember what had happened, but that kind of my recollection of it. Now, we did go.
Rory's son Ben is in the studio and he's got a big smile on his face right now as he listens to his dad.
The hotel was on like a slope like that, so as soon as you go outside, I think the bed started going downhill.
When Ben's old enough to party, by the way, you're going to have no leg to stand on when you say, mate, you're a bit out of control last night. Sorry, Colin. What were you saying? Your recollection was what the bed was?
Well, there was a bed there because I think it was like Jack Noel or somebody basically had to be put to bed like 2 nights before, so in the team room. So that was the bed was there. And so we obviously like playing pranks with it and stuff. I think that was it. We were going to push him out. I think we pushed him out into the street and literally, but the hill was like this. I think the bed started to like gradually. We were like, oh no, better not do that. So yeah. But I remember that, and then because you went home, didn't you go home a day early for Ian Henderson's wedding?
We went home that. So the bed was there. I remember coming down that morning. So we'd obviously been drinking all night. Went down and said, Hendy, come on, we'll go and see if there's any beer in the team room. So me and Hendy went down, and Jack is like lying on the sofa outside of the team room in his blazer. He can turn the Lions blazer inside out. So he's got this inside out hospital bed beside him. And I went, no, Lee, all right, maybe go up to bed. And he's the colour of that shirt. He's drained. And he looked at me and went, what are you doing? I said, me and Hendy are going to see if we can find a beer. And he went, well, if you're drinking, I'm drinking too, sir, best. And I went, mate, you look like you benefit from a few hours kip. He went, no. So of course he came out and he drank with us. But after the bed incident then, it was me and Hendy are sitting still drinking, and they came down and said, Rory, your flight's in a couple of hours. Your transfer is going in about 15 minutes. There's you, Hendy and Wig, or Graham Roundtree are all in the same bus. So I went, and you know what the annoying thing was? I'd seen this script before after 2013, so I had everything packed. My sort of the stuff for when I got to, I can't remember where we went through Dubai maybe, all sort of sitting that would go into the rucksack, bag all packed, because 4 years earlier, I'd left half the stuff in Australia. And then I've no real recollection of going to the room, but I arrived. We had to fly Auckland to Melbourne, because it was Qantas, then fly. So we get to, that flight, you're down the back of the plane, supporters everywhere. I'm like, oh, please, just get me on to somewhere where I can sleep. We land then in Melbourne, and Hendy and I are walking through, and next thing beside where they check you onto the plane, there's 2 seats, And there's people, like, I mean, this is like a capital mark. There's people over, and I went, Hendy. So Kat sat down, and within 5 seconds, both were fast asleep. Next thing I get somebody like going like this here, and I went, are you guys getting on that flight from Melbourne to Dubai? And I says, yeah. And I opened up, and there was nobody in the airport. So then, of course, we're last on. What made it even worse was Wig had sent a picture into the group to go, look at these two, fast asleep as he boarded the plane.
So
didn't even try to wake. Now, he might say he did and we couldn't, but and then we got on to that flight. Yeah, I then get to Dubai and no clothes, no anything. I had to go and buy a change of clothes in Dubai airport. So I went, but yeah, so that was that was a one-off.
I mean, when you said you'll set the record straight, you basically confirmed.
Yeah, what part was untrue? None of it.
The bit where Haas talks about the bed rolling into a bus stop is untrue.
Okay, there we go. Well, I was telling one the other week about when it was the third test in 2013 and Gats was naming the team, and I was sat about 3 or 4 rows behind you. And he said, boys, the guy's not involved. You got 3 options. Option one is, you don't go out. Option 2 is you go out, but when you come in, you don't wake up the test team. Or option 3 is you go out, you don't come back. And within about 5 seconds, I got a ping from you saying, I'll take option 3, thanks, Gats.
Good teammate. Getting ready for the game.
We had a good final sort of 5 days, didn't we?
Oh, we did. It's funny that. And a lot of, like, say, your partners and stuff at home, the family can't understand. Well, hold on, you played on a Saturday, was the last test. Why are you not flying till Wednesday or Tuesday? You go, I don't know, just we're doing a debrief.
Insurance purposes.
We're doing a debrief in case this team ever gets back together. But talk about Lions, though, and how unique it is, and the fact that, as you say, Bestie, for you said earlier, mate, 4 years, so used to playing against each other, and you suddenly come together. Someone that you got on remarkably well, that you wouldn't necessarily put you two together, but Christian Wade, you got flown out a little bit late. But you and Wadey, you really hit it off, didn't you? Like the most unlikely friendship.
So that 2013, just like you say, the most unlikely friendship. So that midweek game, I'd captained against the Brumbies, and you remember we got absolutely hugged by the Brumbies, and it was one of those where you just knew, it felt like we didn't win a line. Well, I'm sure somebody would probably say we didn't win a line out, and it was kind of one of those where it was meant to be one of the greatest moments of your life, captaining the Lions. Do you remember those, like, the name of the team, there was like 3 A and others in it? It's like, well, who's the A and others? Wadey was one of them. So I am in the depths, and I just remember, like, and Canberra's tricky at the best of times, never mind the middle of winter. And then we transferred up towards first test Brisbane, and I remember going up and they read the rooming list out just as I arrived into the hotel, and I'm just going, just please give me somebody that I know I'm comfortable with, because at this stage I'm going, I just want to go home. This is really, I know that any chance I had of playing is now gone, because that was tragic. And next thing going, Rory Best, Christian Wade, and I went, please, like, why? We have nothing in common whatsoever. And we get into the room, and, like, I mean, he's offering me the coconut butter from his skin. He goes, it'd be great for your complexion. He goes, do you want the afro comb? Hi, man. And honestly, I just laughed the whole time. And probably the best story was they were naming that a meeting in the middle of the day on whatever that was, the Monday or the Tuesday, to name the team. And I says to Wadey just slept most of the day. And I said, Wadey, we have a meeting. He goes, oh, what's that for? And I went, it's team announcement. He goes, is it compulsory? And I went, well, no. He goes, are you going? I said, yeah. He goes, all right. He goes, let me know if I'm in, will you? I went, okay. Walked down. So, of course, team was named. Not surprisingly, I wasn't in it. Even less surprisingly, Wadey wasn't in it. I walked back in the door. He's asleep again. So, when the door closed, he wakes up and goes, well, I'm in. I went, mate, he mentioned you that you just missed out. That goose step you did on Faz in training when you laughed at him when you ran around him, that was the bit that just nearly made it for you.
Oh, God. What a man. Of course, he went to that nightclub as well where he texted us all. He said, boys, I've sorted this out. Like, it's all sorted. Like, you just come to the door and just say, it's under my name. So we get there. I said, Christian, wait, they're like, yeah, come this way. And he's there, and the DJ booth is where Coley is, and he's there with his bottle of vodka, and he's sort of like bobbing up and down. We're like, is that Wadey?
Yeah.
Sort of come over. He's got a one-person booth. Wadey, there's 10 of us, mate.
And then we're told, then we all sort of stood around, and the bounce goes, sorry guys, you can't stand around the DJ booth. Clear off. And then he went, all right, boys, see you later. All right. Cheers, Wadey.
Oh, it is like it is characters though.
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
Make the tour.
Still talking about it now, which is absolutely crazy. Yeah. Favorite bestie moment from your tour, mate, with him?
Oh, I'm like Queenstown. I don't know. Honestly, I don't think this man slept because you'd like go all night with us, and then like your family was out there. It's like that was something. Just his liver, basically. I'm trying to think.
We're
quite a few, mate. We're quite a few.
You're going to give him a headache now.
Yeah, exactly. I got a jaw ache from laughing.
You're going to have to go for a lie down.
Anyway, that is for the Love Rugby live stream. Thanks so much, Bestie. Thanks to Sage, our partners. We'll have to get you on again, mate. Because although we did most of the coverage about the Lions, and we still didn't cover everything, we quickly got sidetracked. But thank you so much for listening and joining. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. We've loved it. And we'll be back on Saturday straight after the game to cover the Lions versus the Waratahs. Thanks so much. Please like and subscribe, and you'll never miss another video.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye from me.
Yeah, goodbye. Right, what about that other story? No.